Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Learning Podcast, the place where you improve your English step by step. I'm Jason, and joining me today is my amazing co-host, Julia.
Hi, Jason. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited for today's episode because we're going to talk about something really important: how to speak better English like a native speaker.
That's right. A lot of English learners want to sound more natural, confident, and fluent when speaking English. But sometimes it feels difficult, right?
Absolutely, many learners struggle with pronunciation, intonation, connected speech, and even confidence. But don't worry. Today, we're going to share practical tips and techniques to help you improve step by step.
Yes, and the best part? We'll make it simple and fun for you to follow along. So whether you're a beginner or an advanced learner, this episode will help you sound more like a native speaker.
That's right. So grab a notebook if you want to take notes, and let's get started.
So before we jump into the techniques, let's talk about something important. Why do so many English learners want to speak like a native? Julia, what do you think?
Great question. One big reason is confidence. When you sound more natural in English, you feel more comfortable speaking with native speakers.
Exactly. If your pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm are natural, people understand you better. That makes conversations easier and more enjoyable.
Another reason is work and career opportunities. In many jobs, speaking clear and natural English is a big advantage. It helps with interviews, meetings, and presentations.
Yes, employers often prefer candidates who can speak fluently and confidently because it shows professionalism. And let's not forget travel. If you love traveling, speaking naturally helps you connect with locals more easily.
That's true. And I think another reason is social life. When you speak English naturally, you can make friends from different cultures and backgrounds. You feel included in conversations instead of just listening quietly.
Exactly. And for many learners, the goal is not just to speak English, but to speak English effortlessly like a native. But remember, you don't have to be perfect. The goal is to sound clear, confident, and natural.
Right. And today, we'll give you tips to improve step by step so you can reach that goal.
All right, now that we know why speaking like a native is important, let's move on to the first big area of pronunciation and intonation. All right, now let's get into the first key to speaking like a native: pronunciation and intonation. Julia, why are these so important?
Great question. Pronunciation is how you say words correctly, and intonation is the rhythm and melody of your speech. Both are super important if you want to sound natural in English.
Exactly. Let's talk about pronunciation first. One of the biggest differences between native and non-native speakers is how they pronounce certain sounds. For example, the tiot sound in words like think and this.
Yes, many learners say tink instead of think or dis instead of this, but here's a simple trick: place your tongue between your teeth and blow air out think this that.
Nice. And another important sound is the difference between ship and sheep, the short I in ship and the long I in sheep. If you say I saw a sheep but mean I saw a ship, it can be confusing.
Right! These small pronunciation details can change the meaning of a word. That's why listening and practicing are so important.
And that brings us to intonation. Many learners speak in a flat tone, but English has a musical quality. It goes up and down.
Yes, let's do a quick example. Listen to these two sentences. 1. I didn't say he stole the money. Flat tone, no expression. 2. I didn't say he stole the money. Natural rise and fall. Do you hear the difference?
Absolutely. The second one sounds more natural and expressive. So if you want to sound like a native, pay attention to which words are stressed and how your voice moves up and down.
Great. Now let's take this a step further and talk about common pronunciation mistakes and how to fix them.
Now that we've covered the basics of pronunciation and intonation, let's talk about something super important: common pronunciation mistakes and how to fix them. Julia, what are some mistakes that learners often make?
Great question. One of the most common mistakes is not pronouncing the ending sounds of words. For example, many learners say wan instead of want or goin' instead of going.
Oh, yes. In English, the final sounds are really important. If you don't say the T in want, it might sound like one. A simple fix is to slow down and focus on the last sound of each word.
Exactly. Another common mistake is the confusion between short and long vowel sounds, like bit and beat or ship and sheep. If you say, I saw a ship, but pronounce it as I saw a sheep, people might misunderstand you.
That's a good one. Here's a quick tip: stretch long vowels and keep short vowels quick and sharp. Try this. Repeat after me. Bit, beat, bit, beat.
Nice. Another big mistake is the thash sound, like in think and this. Many learners replace it with T or D, so they say tink instead of think or dis instead of this.
Right. The trick is to put your tongue between your teeth and blow air out. Like this hink, hiss. Let's practice. Julia, say think and this correctly, and I'll say the wrong way.
Sure, think this correct pronunciation.
Tink dis wrong pronunciation. See the difference?
Yes. And one more common mistake, stressing the wrong syllable in words. For example, some learners say photograph instead of pho to graph.
Good one. In English, certain syllables are stronger than others. If you stress the wrong part, words sound unnatural. A great way to fix this is to listen to native speakers and repeat after them.
Exactly. So, practice ending sounds, vowel length, the th sound, and word stress. Now let's move on to a big secret to sounding native, connected speech.
Now that we've talked about pronunciation mistakes, let's move on to something that will make your English sound really natural: connected speech. Julia, can you explain what that is?
Of course, connected speech is when words link together in natural conversation. Native speakers don't pronounce every word separately. Instead, they blend words to make speech smooth and fast.
Right. For example, listen carefully to these two sentences. One, I want to go out. Slow, separate words. Two, I want to go out. Connected speech, did you hear the difference? Instead of want to, I said wanna.
Yes, this happens a lot in English. Let's look at some common examples. Going to Ghana. I'm gonna call you later. Want to, do you wanna come? What do you think?
Exactly. And here's another important connection: linking sounds. In English, when one word ends in a consonant and the next starts with a vowel, they blend together. For example, pick it up sounds like pick it up, turn it off sounds like turn it off.
Yes, and another common thing is dropping sounds in fast speech. For example, instead of saying, don't know, native speakers say, dunno, I don't know what to do.
That's true, and these small changes make English sound faster and more natural. But don't worry, the best way to learn connected speech is to listen and repeat. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, and try to copy how native speakers talk.
Exactly. If you practice connected speech, your English will sound much more fluent. Now, let's move on to something just as important: how to improve your rhythm and stress in English.
Now that we've talked about connected speech, let's move on to something that really makes you sound like a native speaker, using natural expressions and phrases. Julia, why is this important?
Well, native speakers use a lot of idioms, slang, and phrasal verbs in daily conversations. If you only use textbook English, you might sound a bit unnatural.
Exactly. Let's start with idioms. These are phrases that don't always mean what the words say. Here's one. It's a piece of cake. Julia, what does that mean?
Oh, that means it's very easy. So instead of saying, that test was very easy, you can say that test was a piece of cake.
Great. Now let's talk about phrasal verbs. They're super common in native speech. For example, instead of saying continue, we say carry on. Instead of leave, we say head out.
Yes, Here are some useful phrasal verbs. Hang out. Spend time with friends. Let's hang out this weekend. Look up to admire someone. I really look up to my teacher. Run into meet by accident. I ran into an old friend today.
Nice. And of course, there's slang short, informal words native speakers use. For example, instead of saying I'm very tired, you can say I'm beat.
Or instead of that's really good, you can say that's awesome.
Exactly. If you learn idioms, phrasal verbs, and slang, you'll sound more natural and confident when speaking English.
Absolutely. Now, let's move on to how to think in English instead of translating from your native language.
Now let's talk about something that can completely change the way you speak thinking in English. Julia, why is this so important?
Well, many learners translate from their native language to English in their heads before speaking. But this takes time and often leads to mistakes because different languages have different structures.
That's so true. If you think directly in English, you'll speak faster, sound more natural, and feel more confident. But how can learners do this?
Great question. One easy way is to start with simple thoughts. For example, when you wake up, don't say in your native language, I have to get up now and then translate. Just think in English time to wake up.
Yes. Another great tip is to describe what's happening around you in English. If you're walking in the park, think, the weather is nice today. I see people jogging. The birds are singing.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to train your brain is to talk to yourself in English. For example, when you're cooking, you can say, now I'm chopping the onions. Next, I'll add some salt.
That's a great trick. And here's another one: use an English-only dictionary instead of translating words. If you don't know a word, look it up in English and read the definition instead of translating it to your language.
That's a fantastic way to build vocabulary and train your brain to think in English.
So remember one, start with simple thoughts in English 2. Describe your surroundings in English 3. Talk to yourself in English 4. Use an English dictionary. If you practice these every day, thinking in English will become natural.
Yes, and now let's move on to another powerful tip, immersing yourself in English daily.
Now that we've talked about thinking in English, let's discuss something just as important: using the right resources to practice. Julia, what are some of the best ways to practice English daily?
There are so many great resources. First, listening to English podcasts is one of the best ways to improve your understanding and pronunciation. You can listen while commuting, exercising, or even doing chores.
That's a great tip. And watching English TV shows and movies is another fun way to learn. Try watching with English subtitles first, then without them to test your listening skills.
Yes, and don't forget reading. Reading books, news articles, and blogs in English helps you learn new words in context.
Absolutely, and if you want to practice speaking, apps like HelloTalk and Tandem let you chat with native speakers. You can also use language exchange partners or join online English groups to practice.
The key is to surround yourself with English every day. Even just 10 to 15 minutes of focused practice can make a huge difference.
That's right. So find the resources that work best for you and make English a part of your daily life. Now let's move on to our final section: staying consistent and motivated in your English journey. We're almost at the end of our podcast, but there's one last thing we need to talk about: confidence in speaking. Many learners know a lot of English but feel too shy or nervous to speak. Julia, what advice would you give to them?
Great question. First, remember that mistakes are part of learning. Even native speakers make mistakes. The key is to keep speaking and not be afraid of errors.
That's so true. And another tip is to speak slowly and clearly. Many learners think they need to speak fast to sound fluent, but actually, speaking clearly is more important than speed.
Yes, and a great way to build confidence is to practice speaking alone. Talk to yourself in the mirror, record your voice, or even read aloud from books.
That's a fantastic idea. And if possible, find a speaking partner. Someone who is also learning or a native speaker who can help you.
Exactly. And most importantly, have fun with English. The more you enjoy speaking, the more confident you'll become.
Confidence grows with practice. So don't wait, start speaking today. Now let's wrap up with some final thoughts. Wow, we covered so much today. From pronunciation and connected speech to thinking in English and building confidence, these are the key steps to speaking better English like a native.
Yes, and remember, fluency doesn't happen overnight. The more you practice, the more natural your English will sound.
Absolutely. So here's our challenge for you. Pick one tip from today's podcast and start using it right now. Maybe practice connected speech, think in English, or learn some new native expressions.
And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and share it with a friend who's also learning English.
Also, tell us in the comments, what's the biggest challenge you face in speaking English? We'd love to help.
That's right. Keep practicing, stay confident, and most importantly, enjoy the journey of learning English.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Happy learning.